All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the West Allis West Milwaukee School Board to order. Sorry. All right, Jane, Ms. Carr, will you please lead the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sarah, will you do the roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Sikich,
Present.
Ms. Steele,
Here.
Mr. Burns,
Present.
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Mrs. Kaiser is excused. Mrs. Carr,
Here.
Mrs. Lee, here. Mr. Keller.
Here.
President Lee.
Here.
All right, so a proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Mr. Norris, do we have any modifications to the agenda?
At this time, we have no modifications.
All right, then I would ask you to please give the superintendent's report.
So jumping right in tonight, we'll jump into legislative updates. So we have two for this evening. The first one is a requirement of formal artificial intelligence guidance for schools that is being proposed to the United States Senate. This proposal will require pre-K-12 school districts to provide guidance on AI use in schools in the classroom. The NSF, which is the National Science Foundation of Education on AI, aims to establish scholarships, PD opportunities, and research through the National Science Foundation. The WASB, which is the Association of School Boards, has adopted a formal resolution on AI, recognizing its significance and focusing on state discussions. The second area of legislative updates for tonight is the Supreme Court has moved to hear a WMC case seeking to overturn Governor Evers' partial veto that raised revenue limits for 400 years. The Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce filed a lawsuit with the Supreme Court to overturn the usage of the partial veto power to raise school revenues by $325 through the year of 24-25. The court will take up the suit, with petitioners having 30 days to file a brief and respondents having 20 days. The suit questions if extending an appropriation past a designated timeline increases appropriations, with the WSB claims is unconstitutional past precedent. Kind of funny, the governor veto is known as the Vanna White veto from Wheel of Fortune. So just kind of a fun fact. And what they don't mention is that the past 4 governors have used that as well. So just kind of a fun fact about that veto power. So we're looking to see how that certainly unveils, because that'll have some impact on us should that be overturned. So, moving to district recognitions, the State Solo and Ensemble Music Festival on Saturday, May 4th, students from area schools participated in the Wisconsin School Music Association WSMA State Solo Ensemble Music Festival hosted at Carroll University. During the festival, students performed vocal and instrumental solos, duets, trios, and small ensembles before adjudicator. District students from, apologies. District students from Central Nathan Hale represented our district at the festival and earned medals as follows. West Allis Central High School Orchestra, 18 gold and 1 silver. West Allis Central Choir, 6 gold and 2 silver. The Nathan Hale High School Band earned 64 gold and 18 silver. Nathan Hale Choir, 33 gold and 6 silver. And Nathan Hale High School Orchestra, 57 gold and 2 silver, for a total of 207 medals, 178 gold and 29 silvers, which is more than twice as many medals as in 2023. So huge congratulations to all the students. Additionally, we congratulate Cameron Jenkins from Central High School, is nominated for exemplary performance, recognized by his adjudicator for his musical theater performance at the state. So huge congratulations to them and performances put on by the students. The next thing we have here is the Dr. Marty Lexman Music Education Scholarship. So the committee, working with Dr. Lexman, worked hard this year to raise money, review applications, and award their first scholarship from the new scholarship fund. This spring, at our concerts and awards, they presented $3,000 in scholarships to 7 students who represent all of the secondary schools. 3 students received scholarships for private lessons. 1 student was attending the WISTA orchestra camp on scholarship, and 2 students are being supported as they begin their post-high school education. We congratulate Kaylee Tim of Frank Lloyd Wright for voice lessons, Ray Bigelow from Nathan Hale Music Education and Music Performance at University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. R.A.L. Rowe from Franklin Wright Violin Lessons. Eiley Rowe from Franklin Wright Cello Lessons. Shaylin Smith from West Dallas Central Violin Lessons. And Angel Gonzalez from West Milwaukee for the WIST Orchestra Camp. And Jessica Sheets from West Dallas Central for Music Therapy at the University of Iowa. Our first 7 recipients are the first 7 of the recipients of the Marty Lexman Music Education Scholarship. So super proud of the students and their all their efforts and the acknowledgement of the first scholarships. Great. Would like to shift to district recognition to the Recreation Department. The Recreation and Community Service Department would like to thank and recognize Mike Lukomsky, who is our Assistant Finance Manager, for expediting the delivery and setup of the square. As many of you know, we were recently hit with ransomware, which impacted our district's servers. And so our rec department is one of the main things that was hit by this ransomware. So our rec department was unable to take payments. A lot of families who access programming have online like platforms they log into, they have their own accounts, and all that stuff was lost. So really big thanks to Mike Lukomsky, big thanks to the rec department for all their efforts there to keep things moving and keep families engaged through that. That was just a well put together turnaround. So really thankful to them and all their efforts. Other updates, just want to hit on a couple of visits that Dr. Robinson has here. So we had SAIL summer leadership trainings in June from the 11th through the 13th. Dr. Robinson attended his fraternity convention, the Grand Education Convention. We had NEOLA meetings with Dr. Zimmern last week, the city schools meeting last week with West Milwaukee, the Village of West Milwaukee, and the city of West Dallas, and then demolition kickoff for the Lane Recreation Project, which will be the dates coming up to be determined. So I think that concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. All right, next we have public comments. At this time, there is nobody signed up for public comments. There is, if you are on Zoom, there is a link in the Zoom to sign up if you'd like to. Seeing that nobody signed up, I am going to close out public comments at this time. All right, agenda item number 8.1, review of the board calendar. Tonight, June 24th, we have a regular board meeting, action proposed on the 2024-2025 budget and preliminary tax levy. On Monday, July 8th, we have a regular board meeting, followed by financial stability and efficiency workshop on health insurance. Monday, July 15th, our board workshop has been canceled, so enjoy the evening off. And then Monday, July 22nd, we have a regular board meeting. All right, now we have board committee reports, employee engagement and culture, Mr. Keller.
All right, thank you. We met last week on June 18th and discussed a number of items. First of all, we did go over our vacancy report. Right now, we're actually trending pretty well with a 4% vacancy rate. I think we have just under 20 open positions between teaching and administrative positions, and then I think right around 20 EA positions. We talked a little bit about our substitute fill rate. That was just under 60%, so a little bit of a dip from last year. We're continuing to look at different ways to address that, but that's a challenge across districts. We talked about exit interviews as well. So again, exit interviews are for anybody who is retiring or resigning or leaving the district at the end of the year, and they were notified. We did only get 5 requests. Definitely a little bit lower than we'd like to get the information from individuals in terms of, just their overall thoughts about their experience working in the district and so forth. So we are looking for ways to address that and be a little bit more proactive and hopefully get a higher participation rate in the future. One thing that we talked about as well was reasons for individuals that did resign. And different from previous years, the number one reason was work environment. Typically in the past, it had been salary quite consistently for a while. But this year, it was work environment. The next 2 were actually career change or new position. Salary was actually toward the bottom of the reasons. But one of the things we want to do is dig into that a little bit deeper. We want to see if there's any trends by school, trends in any way, shape, or form. One of the other follow-up pieces to that was the most important factor in your decision to leave. And overwhelmingly was lack of support that was listed as a reason. So obviously those two things go hand in hand. So again, we really want to dive in a little bit deeper to see what trends and try to come up with some ways to combat that as we move forward. Trying to scroll down here. The other thing we talked about is just a summer project that Marianne and the HR team will be working on. So there's going to be some handbook updates, updating the leave policy and procedures. One of the great things that we talked about is actually some touch points to the new teacher employees. So just providing them some information before they start, possibly having a meetup before they start, different things like that, which I think will be pretty exciting so that it's not like information overload on their first week of orientation and so forth. We also talked about doing an interview blitz for the education assistants, a substitute blitz as well, electronic position requests. So looking at doing some of those things electronic as well as electronic hiring packets. And then a bit about educator effectiveness, the rollovers there, and some updating of those forms. That was pretty much everything.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Does anyone have any questions, Mr. Keller, or anything that he'd like his board to, or his committee to work on?
For the exit interviews, is it a third company that's doing them, or is that?
Right now, it's still us.
Okay. Are we, but I know way back when there was talk of a third party doing it, or is that still being considered?
I think everything's on the table at this point.
I'm just wondering if that would
Yeah.
draw more people to actually
Yeah.
participate in the interviews to get more feedback.
Yeah, and I talked about this a bit as well. I think one of the challenges is with something other than education, where everybody's last day is kind of the same day, right? It's kind of just a normal process. On your last day, you will turn in equipment, you'll do whatever you need to do, and you'll meet with HR. So they'll typically do those exit interviews at that time.
Hmm.
In education, you have everybody who's leaving, for the most part, their last day is the same day. So that creates a bandwidth problem, right? So, and even with there being a third party, then I don't know. Again, it's something to look into, but you ultimately, to do it in that type of capacity, you would need a lot of people on hand to schedule all those throughout the rest of the day. But again, we're looking at options. We definitely want that information. We feel like that's vital to, again, find out what everybody's experience was working in the district and any concerns and any blinders that we have, right, in terms of things that we're not aware of that we can be doing better. So we're definitely going to keep staying at that to make sure that we can find a way to get that down.
All right, again, thank you, Mr. Keller. Then Financial Stability and Efficiency Committee update, Mr. Burns.
Sure, thank you. So we met actually 20 minutes ago. And so this is pretty fresh. What's going on? You know, we don't have quite as much going on as the other report that just happened, but we do have a couple of new items that we were discussing, which first of which is we were discussing some busing options for our extracurriculars. There's been some communications that there's some things that we'd like to improve with, and so we're looking into what options we might have for that and kind of starting to get the details of the situation and how that might be addressed. And then we also talked about our referendum planning and our next steps for that. And really, this was talking about how we're going into the schools and looking at what we see within the schools and making sure that what we're seeing and what we're talking about is matching with our facilities master plan. And so that we can make sure that as we move forward, we are talking on consistent terms. And you'll hear more about that on the July 8th meeting coming up. And so that will be more time to ask questions and really find out about that referendum planning. And then you'll also find out on July 8th a little bit more about our health insurance renewal, which is coming up in January 2025. and kind of seeing how we're going to be planning for that, what kinds of things we're going to be looking at as far as costs and decisions that we're going to have to make as far as moving forward and how we're going to be able to make sure that our plans are able to still provide the best health insurance that we can for the district employees. So we'll hear more about that on the 8th though. So besides that, that's all we chatted about today.
All right, anyone have any questions for Mr. Burns or any suggestions for things for his committee to take up? No. All right, thank you, Mr. Burns. And then the Recreation and Community Services Committee update, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. The rec committee met last week on the 17th. We did spend some time on the cyber attack, which Mr. Norris mentioned. It's hopefully in the rear view. I think we had a pretty quick response to it, so that sounds like that is under control. It was kind of an inadvertent upgrade is the way I just summarized it for myself here. So hopefully it stays clean. We did also hear a little bit about the construction updates in the superintendent report. We had the groundbreaking at Lane, so that was exciting. The rec building upgrades over on 68th Street are on track. We also had with the Irving soccer field construction, there was a community meeting last week. There were 5 households represented, and these are all families that we've heard from already. So the concerns continue to be around traffic and making sure that we're being good neighbors. So it sounds like that is also things are on good terms. So we're just trying to make sure we're communicating. We did a little bit of discussion on the strategic plan. As July 1st is rapidly approaching, we're unfortunately not going to make that deadline. We're still going to do our best to make it by the end of the summer with a final draft and bring it to the board. That is all I had. That was the whole meeting, I believe. Yep, that was it.
All right, anyone have any questions for Mr. Becker or any suggestions for his committee? All right, thank you, Mr. Becker. All right, item 8.3, board member reports of community events. Anyone have any events to report? I want to share about. Mr. Becker.
I went down to the Juneteenth parade last week with the district. So it was nice to spend some time with some of our educators and some of our principals. We met a couple of families who were walking by and said that their kids had really good experiences here. So that was nice to hear. Nice to be out in the community. Saw the governor, the mayor. A lot of nice looking cars and bikes.
All right. Then 8.4, Mr. Lee, did you have any updates that you want to? Nope. Okay. All right, then we have on item 9 consent agenda. So 9.1, we have approval of minutes. 9.2, employment summary. 9.3, supplemental contracts. 9.4, financial summary. Does anyone need anything separated out?
So second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion. Oh, sorry, gotta check on Mr. Lee. All right, Mr. Lee is a yes. All right, that motion's passed. Okay, so now we have our action items. So item 10.1, approval of the proposed 2024-2025 budget and preliminary tax levy. Mr. Norris.
All right, good evening, everyone. So I have a number of things tonight, all our annual items to discuss with the board and seek your feedback and hopefully approval. So we'll start with the approval of the 24-25 budget and prelim tax levy. So this is kind of the accumulation of a year's worth of work almost for the administration and the board to get to this point. And as I shared on June 8th, the way that the school finance is set up through the state is that we actually are going to be 3 months into the fiscal year 24-25 before the budget is approved by the board in October. And that's due to this the way that the state calculates state aid and revenues are certified in September, the pupil count. So the amount of money we receive for the state is based on how many kids we have. So those two aspects we're still waiting on. So each year we prepare our preliminary budget outlook for the Board of Education. This year, our initial budget was held on June 8th for the board based on the data presented at these workshops. As I mentioned, we're waiting on state aid, which will be calculated here towards mid to late July. And then also, as I mentioned before, there's the element of the the budget mishap that's going on in Milwaukee that could have some positive impact for our taxpayers in the community. So what I hope to get your approval on tonight is two things, really. A preliminary tax levy and mill rate. The total tax levy for the projected tax levy is $43,760,249, which is just about 1% less than last year. And then additionally, the mill rate is projected at $6.22, which is about a 7% decrease from last year. Those two things are based upon our projected membership enrollment decreasing by 75 kids, which is about what it's been consistent with our 5-year enrollment projection. And then also the mill rate is projected at a 6% increase in equalized property value, which is about what the state estimates for our local municipality. And the last 2 years, it's been a little bit low. It's coming higher, which actually would decrease the mill rate even further. If the state and Milwaukee and all of that's going on right now comes out and says, hey, the money that was misappropriated given to Milwaukee, turns out that goes back into the pot. Well, since we're an aid-heavy school district, 60 cents of every dollar comes from the state. All that's going to mean is we're going to receive more aid, which means our tax levy will actually go down. So that's good to hear. And I really look forward, in a lot of districts in similar circumstances are really waiting to see what happens. July 15th, we get our aid estimate, and it might be a little bit later. We've already been told, hey, it might be a week late, but our next real crack at this is in September, the annual meeting. But I certainly will be updating my finance committee and certainly providing board updates to you guys about what we find, because that will have big impacts for us as we enter a referendum year and other things like that. So, but a couple things I want to mention on the tax levy mill rate. In 2017-18, just as kind of fun information, I think, information facts for you guys. In 2017-18, the total tax levy for the school district was just over $47 million. Today, the projected tax levy is $43,760,000. So in 7 years, it's gone down by almost 7%. So people today in the community pay less for schools today than they did 7 years ago. That's just a fact, right? That's important information. In 2017-18, the mill rate was $10.99. Last year was $6.69, and next year it's being projected at $6.22. So that represents a 43% decrease in the mill rate, right? The big number is, did the tax levy go down? That's actually how you calculate your taxes as a community member. And the answer is yes. And in a time where inflation has gone through the roof, to say that it hasn't really here, and we've been able to navigate that, that's the work of the administration of the board. We're trying to make it reasonable for the community, and I feel like we've been able to do that. So I just think that's important for the community here and for you guys to know as elected officials in the community. So tonight, the budget, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, includes a 5% increase for all staff. It includes a $325 increase in revenue. It includes increases in transportation, our insurance liability, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. It includes, staffing, everything from the beginning to end there. But in total, the budget we're asking the board to approve is a $700,000 deficit this evening, and that $700,000 is due to the technology refresh coming from committed fund balance. So essentially, the budget is balanced for a one-time expense. We have dollars committed from last year's budget for this year's budget for that expense. And as soon as we know more about aid, which I'm again really anxious to find out, we will be reporting back. So rather than go on, I can open the floor for questions from anyone here.
Any questions?
To approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And no, is a yes. All right, so that's passed. All right, then we have 10.2, all CEP district-wide. Again, Mr. Norris.
Okay, so CEP, which stands for the Community Eligibility Provision, is the provision through the state of Wisconsin, the federal government, which allows all students in our school district to eat breakfast and lunch for free. And school districts across the state have the ability to be considered CEP based upon the number of free and reduced students in the district. So some school districts who don't meet the 60% criteria eligibility, who can't say, hey, our district eligible to be CEP, sometimes have schools that are CEP eligible. So you might hear about schools that go, this whole school eats free, but the whole district does not, right? So our school district does meet that direct certification CEP eligibility. And we've been able to do that because one of the objectives we have is having almost a $3 million Fund 50 fund balance, which is dollars for food service. One of the things we're required to do through the Department of Public Instruction is to, if you have over 3 months of expenses in a fund balance for food service, you're required to have a plan. Right? So back to the summer going into the 22-23 school year, one of the things we said was, hey, we have this fund balance. What better to use it for than let every kid eat breakfast, lunch, for free? Like, what a great thing to do, right? So the objective was then, well, let's see how that impacts the budget. We had projections, but it's based on how many kids eat. So it's like hard to know exactly. And the good thing, which is also like the problem, a challenge, is our fund balance has still been maintained at $2.9 million. So you might say, well, Aaron, that was 3 years ago. What are you doing today? Right? So 2 years ago, then 3 years ago was CEP, which we're seeking approval tonight for. 2 years ago, we added in working with our auditors and DPI, having our facilities staff who clean the lunchroom and prep it using the amount of time they spent at direct cost, billing that to Fund 50, because if the lunchroom's not cleaned and ready to go, you can't have food service, right? So that was about $150,000, which is annually coming out of Fund 50. It lowers our Fund 10 expenses. Now, this year, we implemented a plan to go, well, you can't have lunchroom and breakfast of supervision. So same idea with our EAs, our teachers, our principals, same thing. That was about $300,000. And we're still projecting that our end of year per Fund 50 fund balance is going to be just under $2.8 million, $2.9 million. So we're still working for ideas. This summer, we're working on metering our kitchens. So the gas and electric bills that actually run the kitchens will be separate. We can pay those out of Fund 50. So we are chipping away at it, right? To try to find a kind of a good balance, because you do want to have that 3 months of operating expenses for ovens and stoves, but you don't want to go to zero, because then what happens if an oven breaks, right? So I say all that to say, like, I think this is a great program. I think our families really, it's very highly used, and I think it's just a great opportunity to continue on. So with that, I'll take questions.
If there's no questions,
To approve. Second.
all right, all those in favor? Opposed? Mr. Lee's a yay. All right. All right, 10.3, school fees for 2024-25 school year. Again, Mr. Waters.
Great, okay, another annual item here that we go through every year in June. So school fees is an annual thing that we discuss around, increasing fees for athletics, fees for student, the school year, technology, things like that. So we have not raised student fees since 2017-18, and I see no reason today to do that today. So given inflation, given the financial issues that families have across, certainly not just here, but across the state and the country, our budget is essentially balanced with the exception of the teacher technology purchase. This is not something that I think we need to do financially, nor would I think it would be well received by our families. So at this time, I'd recommend that we keep the school fee structure as is in place, which has been in place since 2017-18.
Question?
Move to approve. Second.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Lee's also. All right, so that has passed. All right, and then our last action item of the evening, 10.4, property liability and workers' compensation insurance. Mr. Morris.
Okay, this was one of the, if you remember back to our June 8th meeting, this was one of the areas that was in italics and bold I was waiting on, right, to see. And so we projected within 1% of what it would be at, which is good. We, try to budget conservatively, and it was right there. So our property liability and workman's comp insurance came in at 12% increase. And all 12% of it came from I gotta read the words here, from building and grounds increases. So if you think to the world we live in today, inflation with workers' wages and workers for materials for building construction, essentially it's catastrophe insurance, right? So what's your building worth today? Well, that went up 12%, right? So all of our buildings obviously appreciate in value. And so to replace it costs more to replace it in a catastrophe. So that increase is about $130,000. Our workman's comp insurance actually decreased a bit, which is good, even though our mode rating went up, and that's likely due to having less employees. We have less people, we have less students. So through attrition that happens. Trying to think of anything else to mention here. Oh, this is kind of interesting too. CM Regent, who was our insuring, so we work with MMA, which is a kind of insurance broker who shops our rates across the state. And so we've been with what's called CM Regent, which is a buildings and ground property liability, not workman's comp insurance agency for almost 10 years. And so CM Regent actually notified us 2 months ago, they were exiting the insurance business for school districts. And I was just curious because there's always a reason why, right? So I guess what happened was, I don't know the whole story, but they had experienced a $16 million claim in Hudson, Wisconsin, at one of the schools there. I believe, I don't know for sure, I believe there was a flood, and again, old buildings, right? A flood that was significant in the case that, you know, they had to rip out exterior walls and there's asbestos, and it can get out of hand quickly, right? It goes to our facility conversation we're having the whole year, right? So Chubb Insurance is the other organization that school districts use across the state. So we got a quote from them and it was pretty competitive in terms of what other areas we're looking at. So I guess with that, I guess I would pause for questions, but I feel like this is in line with what we expected. So it was good to see that come through, even though it was an increase. So
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. All right, no, nay. All right, that motion has passed. I know, that Noah just want to just say something before we end the meeting for tonight. Can we switch the audio over, please?
Can you hear me? Thank you so much. I'm joining you all from Atlanta, Georgia for my work conference that I have starting tomorrow. So Amy, great job tonight. I just wanted to say first, I wanted to welcome Sarah Shepard, who is going to be taking over for Suzette. And she is, I believe, I can't quite see her on the screen, but I did see reference to her. So I presume that she's taking on the position this evening. And so I just want to welcome her as the new executive assistant to the board and to Dr. Robinson. And so I'm looking forward to working with you and appreciate already, I'm going to tell you right now, I appreciate all the things you're going to do to help us run smoothly here in the district. And then the last thing I had to do is obviously Suzette, this is her last board meeting. And then we did honor Suzette at the last regular meeting with some kind words and an award that I'm hoping that she'll be coming back and giving to staff in the future as a retiree. But I just wanted to, again, publicly thank Suzette for everything she has done for our district for over 39 years and wish her the best in her retirement. And I know she didn't give a few words last meeting, but if she wanted to say anything, since this is her last board meeting, I would like to give her an opportunity to do that as well.
Well, you just put me on the spot, Noah. I do want to thank everyone for that beautiful tribute, the award from administration, from the Board of Education, Mayor Devine. It was so wonderful. I'll never forget it. I'm trying not to get emotional because I am an emotional person. But I've spent a lifetime here in West Dallas. I went to schools here, Parkway Elementary. Yeah, I'm that old because it closed the year I left to go to 7th grade at Lane Junior High. And then graduated from Nathan Hale in '84. And I'm happy to say they didn't close Hale after I left because they did close Lane Junior High after I left. But it's just been phenomenal. My education, my career. I just love this district. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Appreciate all the opportunities I was given and just it's been wonderful. So I hope this is not goodbye, just see you later. So thank you again.
Motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.